Russia has violated the agreement. We're not going to let them violate a nuclear agreement and go out and do weapons, and we're not allowed to. So we're going to terminate the agreement. We're going to pull out.
Well, file this under yet another presidential norm broken. Yesterday, Donald Trump announced that the United States will be pulling out of a landmark arms treaty with Russia signed in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan. The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty, limited the development of ground-launched nuclear weapons with the goal of protecting the U.S., the Russians, and Europe from the threat of nuclear war. So with war-making powers increasingly in the hands of the president and not Congress, what does it mean to have this particular kind of president in charge? Michael Beschloss, presidential historian for NBC News and author of the great new book, Presidents of War, joins me now, my current reading. Michael, it's always great to talk to you, so thank you very much for getting up on us.
Thank you so much for having me, Joy.
So, you know, one of the things that you talk about in this book is something that does gall a lot of people in America, the fact that Congress has really shifted the right to declare war into the hands of the president. And you go all the way, you know, back and talking about Jefferson. And thank you for talking about the War of 1812. People don't talk enough about the War of 1812.
Always needs more.
Always needs more. But even all the way through to Vietnam, right? The fact that presidents really have a great deal of weight in determining war and peace. Should that scare the average American?
Joy, it should scare the average American. What keeps me literally awake at night is the prospect that Donald Trump is going to push us toward an unnecessary major war for his own political reasons. And what I do in the book, just as you've said, is I tell the stories, the biographies of all these major war presidents from James Madison all the way to the president. A lot of them have emotional breakdowns. They all get more religious. They have strong marriages, thank God, that center them. And they all have empathy. And a lot of those qualities you don't see in Donald Trump. And Trump has tweeted in the past, 2011, 2012, he tweeted that, predicted that Barack Obama will get us involved in a war to get himself reelected. Not a great idea to be planted in the head of a president at a time where, as you rightly said, presidents can get us into wars almost single-handedly, almost overnight. It is scary.
Yeah, and, you know, with Richard Nixon, there was, you know, and I guess maybe contemporaneously, I'm not sure it was known at the time, but this fear that in his desperation, as he's drinking, right, as he's breaking down, as impeachment is bearing down on him, that he might start a nuclear war. So we've had this fear happen before. But as you said, you know, whatever you think about Richard Nixon, he did seem to have the bearing of a president, of a statesman, right? He had a certain care about the country, but now we're in a really different place.
That's exactly right. And Donald Trump has the single control of nuclear weapons. If a Russian missile comes over the North Pole, or if, God forbid, there's a terrorist incident, and there have been fabricated incidents in the past. James Polk did. William McKinley, there was a ship sunk off of Havana. He said it was the Spanish. We went to war against Spain. Wasn't the Spanish. Lyndon Johnson, 1964, got us involved in a war in Vietnam that lasted 10 years, killed 60,000 Americans along with Richard Nixon, based on an incident called the Gulf of Tonkin. That never happened. We all depend on the character of the President of the United States, and that should make us extremely nervous.
And what's the origin of the Congress ceding this power? I mean, the first branch of government has incredible power when they want to use it. What's the origin of them essentially giving it away?
Well, originally the founders were terrified that presidents of the United States would turn into dictators. They would abuse power. And therefore, they gave the power to declare war not to a president, but to Congress. And, you know, Joy, look over the last 200 years. When presidents have become authoritarian, they usually do it during war. Presidents can declare martial law. Did you get, for instance, a presidential alert announcement on your iPhone from President Trump a couple weeks ago?
Yep.
That was pretty benign, but it becomes wartime. It may not be so benign. He may start sending you political messages that you do not want to receive.
Yeah, indeed. And when I got it, that was precisely my thought. You in this book are you even, you know, take to task, and I think we don't also talk about this enough, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, even the presidents we admire as Americans who routinely get to the top of the top 10 list of great presidents, abused the power during wartime in detaining Japanese Americans, hundreds and thousands of American citizens. So the abuse is not just with presidents we think of as nefarious.
Even the ones that we think are committed to civil liberties. FDR and the Japanese, or Woodrow Wilson passed something called the Espionage Act, which allows a president to go after journalists who write articles that are critical of him, especially of wartime. Guess what Donald Trump is doing right now? He's using that very act.
Has there been we keep on calling Donald Trump unprecedented, but has there been another equivalent to him? Is Andrew Jackson, I tend to think, is there another president like this?
Superficial similarities, but I think this is a president who is in a category of his own. First president in history with no military experience, no experience in government. In 2016, the nation gave the sacred control of our nuclear weapons and the questions of war and peace, the prospect of a war that could kill upwards of 60 million people and incinerate the Northern Hemisphere. That is the kind of power that's in the hands of a president of the United States. You know, we and our children are totally dependent on his character.
Michael Beschloss, the book is Presidents of War. It is my current reading. I think perhaps Rachel Maddow and I are both reading this book at the same time. I'm going to use host privilege to ask you to please sign it for me next time I get to see you in person.
I would be honored. Thank you so much, Joy. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And coming up, more AM Joy.